this is Alex from the infant feeding team. I'm on my own today, and it would be lovely to get a few thumbs up in a minute, just to let me know that you can hear me and see me. Got a few things that I was going to talk about today, but obviously I'm here to answer all your questions as well. As I said, it's infant feeding, so we're here to answer infant feeding questions specifically. So other questions can be addressed to your own community midwives or one of the other forums that we have. So so this is the infant feeding session. We've done loads of them so far. We've covered all sorts of topics and it's been fabulous because we've been guided by you. You've given us the questions and we love having your questions. And they're many and varied, and I know that many of you out there have listened a number of times. Some of you have given us questions and others haven't, and it's wonderful now because we're beginning to meet you all when you're coming in to have your babies, so it's lovely. And some of you coming on here after you've had them and we've met you as well. Thank you for the thumbs up. That's wonderful to hear that you can hear me. That's great. Bear with me, it's always a bit more challenging when I'm on my own. Naomi is on a well-earned holiday and the others are obviously otherwise engaged with other work that we're doing. We've run clinic today, so clinics have restarted, which is great. It's lovely to have that formal ability to see people, so some of you may have benefited from coming to our clinic so far, and it's been really nice to be able to do that. I'm just going to make sure I get up get this up on my laptop at the same time, because that's how I can find the questions. Let me just see if I can see it. Let's see if it's coming up. I'm looking at, see what we can find. Hopefully it'll come up with the we've gone live, and then I'll be able to see what's happening. And there it is, marvellous. I can see it, so hopefully I'll get your questions. I've put a note on the door today, so hopefully I won't be offered a cup of tea during this session, and I've left my bleep with someone else to answer it during this session, so hopefully not too many interruptions. Lovely to see the numbers going up. There's 25 of you there now so far. Lovely to see. It's really interesting actually, because we get to see your faces coming up as well. We get little icons, which is quite fun. Makes it really feel much more like I'm dealing with an individual rather than just a camera, which is lovely. And as I said, we are beginning to meet quite a few of you, which has been lovely. It's quite often I go and meet somebody and they go, oh, I've seen you. So I love the feedback from you all to think about things that you might like us to talk about. Obviously there's so much to talk about and everybody has different challenges, which is why we're guided by your questions, which are so useful, and we're really grateful for your questions. What I thought we would talk about today was responsiveness and relationship building, which is really important. And I'm sure you're thinking, what? We all know about this, but actually it's thinking about that fact that you can start building a relationship even in the antenatal period with your baby. We believe that babies can hear from somewhere as early as 16 weeks. And they know your voice, and you'll notice that when you have your baby, that they'll settle when they hear you, and they'll know your partner's voice, and they'll know, if you've got children, they'll know those voices. And there was a video of a little child talking to the mummy's tummy during an ultrasound, and the baby reacted to the other child's voice, which is lovely. Obviously not something we can do at the moment because we can't have numerous people at the scans, but when that could happen, it was amazing to see the response from that baby still in the tummy to its sibling, so the sibling's voice. So babies are already getting used to that. So we're talking about how mums can already build a relationship up with their baby when they're pregnant. And I know when you feel like you become a mother is completely different from one mother to another, but we do actively encourage you to be aware of when you feel the movements, and that's obviously a safety thing too, and that every kick counts. Being aware that maybe your baby has a pattern, that they're awake at certain times of the day and others. That you can stroke your stomach, you can sing or talk to your tummy, you can visualize what your baby's going to look like. Having scans obviously helps with that too, but it's just building that relationship up with the baby. And I remember being on delivery suite with a couple, and they'd been playing a piece of music the whole way through pregnancy to her tummy, and when she came to have the baby, she wanted that piece of music playing because she felt that would be reassuring for the baby. So there are lots of different ways of thinking about it and playing to that. So it's thinking about that baby, building that relationship up before they're even born. And when they're born, it's having that closeness and comfort, and we've talked about it so many times on these sessions, making sure that you get as early skin to skin as you can get. Now obviously sometimes things do get in the way, but trying to get skin to skin as early as you can for as long as you can, and until at least the first feed. And that really grounds your baby. They not only they now know your voice, they've heard you all the way through, they now know what you smell like, and that's really important. They can feel you, they can, obviously they hear you, and they enjoy the warmth of you, your comfort, you're supporting them there. So that's really fantastic. So, you know, building that first relationship up with the baby. And that baby is to do with attachment, and attachment is so important for building confident and independent children as they grow older. You know, we hear a lot about mental health. There's a huge amount about it, you know, nowadays, and even more so now with COVID. And babies need that secure attachment with a caregiver. And obviously the first ones are usually mother and father, not always, but usually. And it's having that strong bond, that strong attachment with this person. And those first months of life are all about ensuring that they know that they can trust you, that you've met their needs. Babies can't self-soothe, they can't calm themselves down. They need you as the caregiver to do that. So they need you to respond to them, to when they're crying, to give them a hug, to bring them in close, to let them benefit from your warmth, that reassuring smell of you, to hear your voice, whether it's, you know, nursery rhymes or something are so handy. I can always remember my husband knew when things weren't good because I'd be singing Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star, trying to calm my babies down. So it's things like that that you can find, and that any sort of form of singing, you don't have to be good at it, will be good for your baby and will be reassuring for them, and they'll love hearing you and your voice. And as time goes on, your baby learns to trust you and that you're going to meet their needs. And as they get older, these are the babies that will actually be able to stray that little bit further away from mum and dad, because they know that you're going to meet their needs. You're not going to let them down. So we talk a lot about attachment. We talk a lot about wearing slings. We've talked about that so often on this programme. But babies are born expecting to be cuddled and loved, and slings meet the need of that. So this attachment, you know, this secure attachment starts, as I mentioned, before the baby's born. So thinking about that, talking to your baby, singing to your baby, being aware of when your baby's moving, stroking your tummy, responding to the kicks, through to that first skin to skin, and keeping your babies close in those early months is absolutely crucial for them to feel comforted and secure, and it will be absolutely brilliant, and a brilliant start for them and a good start for you too. And as I said, we do often suggest slings because they meet the needs of many babies. We live in a culture where we expect babies to be able to be happy to be put down, to go in a chair or a cot, but our babies don't expect that, and that's really hard because our culture is going against what the baby's expecting. So your baby's not expecting to be there. So it's trying to find ways that are safe to have your baby with you and close to you. So that's why slings are really good, because it actually leaves your hands free, because I think we're all used to busy lives. We like to get things done. We might want to get some washing on. We might want to put the hoover around. It's amazing what you can do with a sling on. However, I would say cooking is not a good option when you've got a baby in a sling. That wouldn't be compatible, but other things are. Going out for a walk, meeting the baby's needs is lovely. I can see questions coming through now, and I'm going to say to Claire, thank you very much for putting me out of my misery having to do all the talking. So let me just see what Claire's written. She says, thanks for doing this. You're doing a great job. Perhaps related to relationship building, I wondered about non-nutritive feeding. Her 12-week, huge 7-kilo baby does a lot of this at night before his longest stretch of sleep. I can't see or hear him swallowing, but is milk actually coming out when he's nibbling? Should I just leave him to it or stop him after 40 mins? Is this driving my oversupply? Sometimes he does a good hour. Sorry for all the questions, many thanks. I mean, we've talked about it so many times before about breastfeeding being way, way more than just food. So he's probably just enjoying that real closeness and comfort with you, Claire, and that's just really normal. Nibbling, we think that nibbling, if it's towards the end of a feed, is that what we call like chocolate pudding with a teaspoon. We've talked about it before. We've talked about the fact that they go chomp, chomp, chomp to get your let down, big deep sucks with pauses when they're getting the majority of your milk, and that they go as they start to get toward the end of the feed, they just do little nibbles and a big gap, little nibbles and a big gap. And we think that's when they're getting the fattier part of the milk. So it's just that chocolate pudding with a teaspoon. Whether that's contributing to your oversupply, I don't know, because I would think as he's not really driving it, that isn't really going to be stimulating. I think this is possibly more the comfort side of it, which is perfectly normal. And I think we do get back to our culture. We don't expect our babies to be, we expect our babies to be able to be put down. We also expect babies not to feed just for comfort, but they do, and that's totally normal. So I think from that point of view, I'm just make sure I have answered all your questions, Claire. Let me quick nip back at it. And you've obviously done such a fab job, a 7-kilo baby, how wonderful. So there probably is some swallowing going on. It's not going to be that really big, deep swallowing you can hear at the beginning when he's getting the big volumes of milk. This is that just tiny little bits, but it's going to be higher fat, and that's still really important. That will be contributing to your 7K. So thinking about that. And now I wouldn't take him off, let him carry on. I mean, you can just draw back, see if he lets go, and he might do. But there again, he might just munch back on again. So see what happens. But and no apologies needed for the questions. I want the questions. Keep me going. I don't want to be doing all the talking on my own. I'd much prefer some questions. Moving on then to Mariana. Mariana said, thank you for the sessions, have been useful. Her 9-week-old baby boy is exclusively breastfeeding. He's putting on weight well, and although the past months I've noticed his feeds are very short, less than 5 minutes, he does not open his mouth much to latch and comes off the breast frequently. He needs feeds frequently and his hiccups frequently. I'm thinking he maybe has a mild tongue tie. I've made improvements on his attachment and it got better, but he's still not feeding for a long time. Is there any advice you could give, or where could I have him assessed? Well, he's 9 weeks old now, Mariana, so that means that you come under the health visitor team, and they have a team within the core health visiting team of enhanced breastfeeding supporters. So actually they would be the ones to go to if you want an oral assessment. We see babies up to 6 weeks and they take over from then on, so they can have a quick look and see. So if you contact your normal health visitor and say, can I have an appointment with the enhanced breastfeeding supporter, and it might be your normal health visitor because they have many hats, our health visiting teams, and ask for an oral assessment to see if they can have a look and see if your baby needs to have a tongue tie assessment. Some babies can get all they need in a few minutes, but it does sound like your baby's feeding very frequently, so it may be worth having a look at. And it's never ever too late to look at positioning and attachment as well. I think we've spoken about this many a time. Positioning attachment can be adjusted at any stage, and what happens very often as babies get older, we don't allow for their change. We don't allow for the fact this baby's bigger, and sometimes it's us as mums that have to move the baby to allow for this much bigger baby, so that they get a really good attachment and therefore they get a really good feed whenever they go on. So it would probably be well worth contacting your enhanced breastfeeding supporter within the health visiting team and ask if you can be seen to assess for tongue tie, and get them just to check that you're still doing the best latch you can be doing, because you just remember that nose to nipple, bringing and making sure that baby is coming on with an asymmetrical attachment. We've talked about it numerous times, and it's in this book. It's thinking about that picture, making sure even if your baby's 9 weeks, 10 months, 2 years, they still want to come on with the head tipped back nicely to get that big mouthful of breast. So thinking about that, it's never too late to think about positioning and attachment. So have a quick think about that. And see how you get on, and contact your health visiting team. Right, Imi's come through. I hope that answered your questions, Mariana. Imi's come back and said she hopes I'm well. I am, thank you very much. Busy today with breastfeeding clinic, and I'm meeting a whole load of the new midwives this afternoon as well. I've got a lot of new midwives just coming out of uni, and they're just starting, and there's a group of 9 of them today who haven't part of their induction, and I'm going to go meet them after this. So yeah, very busy day. When she was pumping, she gets 60 mils from each breast and sometimes more. Is this normal? That's fantastic. That's really, really brilliant. So that means you're getting 120 mils. We assume that a baby is better at removing milk than a mother, and we would anticipate that a baby who's fully exclusively breastfed and sort of beyond 3 to 4 weeks will be taking in the region of 80 to 150 mils per feed. You wouldn't know that because they're at the breast, you're not going to know, but we think that's the stomach size, and that's what we're working on. So getting 120 mils is absolutely wonderful. That's fantastic. Well done you. Keep it going. It sounds wonderful, and I'm really pleased for you. Lucky baby. I hope that's reassured you. Imi. Claire has come. Hello, Alex. Thanks so much for these sessions. Could you explain what to expect from sleeping and feeding in the first 12 to 24 hours after birth? Right. I've read that babies can be very sleepy and not wake to feed much in this time. Is it okay to let them sleep, or should they be woken regularly to start that? Whoops, I've slipped. To start that, where have we got to? Start that order for milk. My first was an emergency section, so all a bit of a blur, and I was persuaded to give him formula the first night as he wouldn't latch. I don't want this to happen this time. I'm 39 plus 1, oh, soon, not long to go, and it's on my mind. Really want to get it right. So in the first 24 hours, we would anticipate a healthy term baby may only feed 3 times, literally just 3 times. So that's the minimum. They may feed much more, but very often you're tired, babies are tired. So they're not looking for huge amounts of food. And assuming that they're term, and your baby will be term because you're already term now, and they're of a good weight, so within a normal weight, then they've laid fat deposits down. So they're going to have fat deposits on their shoulders, backs of arms, bottom, etc. And they're going to have laid these lovely fat deposits that are going to provide them with added fuel if they're not getting enough food. And they have the ability to do what we call counter-regulate. So when a baby is not getting a huge amount of food in the first 24 hours of life, they can tap into the reserves that they've laid down in the later parts of pregnancy when they've put on that lovely adipose tissue. So they can access that, and they'll make most of any colostrum that you give them too. So we don't worry about a healthy term baby with no concerns. So a baby that might be on observations, or a baby that's had a few problems at birth, we are worried about. A baby that is born to a mother who has diabetes, we're going to keep a really close eye on too. But if the baby is born healthy and term and no risk factors, it may only feed 3 times in the first 24 hours. So this may mean that you may have long periods of time the baby's not sleeping. This often goes through the first night, and then the second day and night, the baby wakes up. They do what my colleague Sarah describes, chasing the milk. And they are constantly awake, feeding and feeding and feeding. That is also normal, and it does not mean you need to give anything else. And should anyone suggest that you need to give any other food, at the moment we are so lucky to have so much donated breast milk within the hospital. There is no need to be giving formula milk. We can keep your babies exclusively human milk fed with the donated milk that we have coming into the hospital. So we are really lucky. We've got so many fantastic mothers in Oxfordshire who are donating their milk, and we have enough to share it on the wards and to some women outside if they've got particular problems in the community. So there is no indication for you to break exclusivity and give formula if you're having a baby at this point in time, because we certainly have enough donated to provide all that we need for the babies that are on the wards. So in the first instance, we'd also be thinking about getting you expressing. So if you've got no risk factors, you could be thinking about expressing already. So you could be thinking about doing some expressing. I'm just looking to see what it was Claire, wasn't it? You could think about doing some hand expressing already. The Association of Breastfeeding Mothers and La Leche do section and have got some very good information online about antenatal hand expressing. We would suggest it from 37 weeks onwards. You only need to do it probably 4 times a day. You could collect a little bit of milk. If you've got access to syringes, they're helpful. They're quite easy, because it makes it easy to give as well. You could ask your community midwives for some if they can get them for you, or you can use any container, clean container that you can put it in. So we have little pots. I had one here. What did I do with it? Oh, there we go. We have little colostrum pots that we sometimes use, but anything like that would do. So I would think in the first instance that we would not be looking at giving your baby formula. We've always got DBM, but before that, even that, we would be thinking about getting you expressing. That is always the first line care. So keeping your baby skin to skin contact if they're not feeding and not attaching, because that brings out the feeding behaviour. It brings out their instinctive breast seeking and breastfeeding behaviour. It's really important. And then getting hand expressing. And our teams here are really good at doing that. And formula should be bottom of the pile. It should be skin to skin, hand express. If we're still struggling, donated breast milk, and only if we've exhausted all of that would we be thinking about formula. Okay, I hope that answers your question. I'm just going to have a look and see. I can see more coming through. Let me see what else I've got. So Anna said, I've been advised combination feed due to medication I'm on. I'm combination fed with my first, but only introduced formula at 3 weeks. Is it possible to combination feed from birth without it impacting too badly on my own milk supply? And we would normally suggest that you start just breastfeeding to establish that supply, because those first few days are so crucial to really get that milk supply going, and then think about introducing formula a little bit later. If you introduce it too soon, you're really going to struggle to get any milk, because the body doesn't know that you want it. So we would normally suggest you get going with the breastfeeding, stick to just breastfeeding initially, and then introduce the formula. I'm not sure who's advised you to do this, and I wonder if it's worth us checking your medication, Anna. There are many medications that are suitable for breastfeeding, and we have access to online resources, books, etc., that are totally up to date on what is compatible and not compatible with breastfeeding. But obviously, if combination feeding is your choice, that's fine. But just wonder if we should perhaps check that you've got the right information on that. I can look it up on, we've got LactNet, we've got medications, Hale medications online, and the Breastfeeding Network as well is also really, really good. So maybe worth having a chat with us, and we can quickly check them up for you. But I would say in the first instance, you did exactly what was right in the first instance, getting the first few weeks. Three maybe you perhaps could do less, but certainly the first or second week, we'd probably say get your milk supply in and then think about introducing formula. But perhaps get in touch, Anna, and let us know what you're on, and we can have a quick look. Claire's come back and said that was reassuring. Great, that's no idea. Oh, Claire's already got some colostrum. You star, you star. I just want to say that actually you don't have to do colostrum. You don't have to collect colostrum. I know more and more of our mums are coming in with collected colostrum. It's not obligatory. You don't have to do it. It's not anything you need to do before you have your baby. Some mums love to do it. They like the reassurance. It's quite useful to learn that skill before they have their baby, and it just means you've got that peace of mind. So do it if you want to. Don't feel obliged. The ones that we would be actively encouraging to hand express before they have their baby are our mothers who have got diabetes, because they're at much higher risk of having to supplement their baby in the early hours, because the baby's struggling to control its own blood sugars, and they will more than likely need additional milk. And mothers who maybe have had problems with feeding previously, who have struggled with their milk supply, and we would be encouraging them to be expressing in the sort of initially before they've had their baby as well. But anybody else who has got no risk factors, don't feel obliged to do it, and you do it if you want to. I can see more and more questions coming through. So Imi has said, Imi, I've not heard of anybody not being able to drink fizzy drinks. Imi has said, can she drink fizzy drinks now? And she's been told not to. As far as we're concerned, there are no fizzy foods. There are no forbidden foods when it comes to feeding, foods or drinks. With regard to alcohol, we'd say moderation. The way it works with alcohol is that it works exactly the same as if in your bloodstream as in the milk, so it's absolutely equal. So you hear about X number of units in your blood. Well, that's going to be X number of units in your milk as well. So somebody who's had a drink will have a bit of alcohol in their milk, and it will take the same length of time, which is a unit an hour, to go out of the bloodstream. So it's just bearing in mind the odd small glass of wine, or whatever your tipple is fine, but bearing in mind that if you're going to have a fair few drinks, you're probably going to want to feed your baby before you do, and leave it as long as possible before you feed again, because then the alcohol will go out of your system. But with regard to general fizzy drinks, I can't think of any reasons why you can't. And even if it were a little prosecco or a champagne to wet the baby's head, that wouldn't do any harm either. But yeah, as I say, no forbidden foods. I hope that reassures you, Ellie. I don't know what your tipple is, but you shouldn't be an issue. Ellie's asked, thank you, Ellie. She said these are very helpful, and she's got her 2-week-old's had a tongue tie cut a few days ago, and she was told it was quite severe and was attached to the bottom gum. I'm not seeing much improvement with her yet. It's still very painful, and baby gets very frustrated and comes on and off the breast. How long after a tongue tie being cut do people usually see an improvement? It's totally typical what you're experiencing. We anticipate in the first 48 hours you're going to have a really crotchety baby, very unhappy. That tongue's not moving how they're expecting. They've got a really sore patch underneath. It's like having with those ulcers in your mouth, so they're going to feel very uncomfortable. That gets better. 48 hours is the worst period. That will start to get better. We would anticipate then up to 2 weeks before you're really seeing any improvement. And it also depends how old your baby, or you did say, yeah, do 2 weeks. So we would think then that it shouldn't be too long before you start seeing an improvement. The later you leave it, the longer we think it takes for that baby to get used to moving its tongue in a different way. So working on positioning attachment, keeping your baby happy, all those things will help the baby to keep, to get feeding working, and it will hopefully get better soon. It does take a bit of time. They are really they're really having to learn to reuse their tongue, and the best thing for it is feeding. As my colleague Naomi would say if she were here, the best physio is breastfeeding. So it's great tongue physio to be feeding the baby at the breast. So keep going, it will get better, Ellie. I know it's really tough at the moment, but it's well worth the investment. And you mentioned that it was quite severe and into the gum. That's often the case. They are often inserted into the gum. We often see that if they're quite forward, they come down and into the gum. So your baby will take a bit of time to get used to that change. I hope that reassures you. So Anna's come back. Okay, she said it's a paediatrician who's told her, but she's going to email me. That's a great idea. Let's just check it. Let's make sure that's right. Sophie. All right, so Sophie's asked, if you do collect colostrum, what's the best way of storing it? Well, we would normally collect it in a syringe. I knew it was worth putting all my props out. We often collect it into little syringes because colostrum is tiny, weeny amounts, because a baby's tummy, when they're first born, is the size of a marble. So, tiny, weeny marble. It grows rapidly. Whoop, I dropped it on the floor. Oh, I've lost it. So if you think of the marble, this is a firstborn, newborn, and this is going to be about a week. So it grows rapidly, as you can see. So we're talking about only a few mils. This syringe only holds 1 mil. This will be holding a lot more, if you imagine. So tiny weeny tummy to here. So when you're thinking about it, it's thinking what you can collect it in. So you could collect it in a little syringe, or a little pot, anything clean. So if you haven't had your baby yet, we could try and get your community midwives to get some syringes out to you. I know some people have ended up buying them online, so they've done that. We did send some out to a mummy, and they took so long to get there. She bought them in the end because our post is not the quickest. So anything like that would do to collect it in. The advantage of a syringe is that when you're hand expressing, it's coming in such tiny, weeny, sticky droplets that it's very difficult to collect it in a sort of bigger pot. You actually literally are sucking the droplets off the end of the nipple as they collect, and it literally collects. It doesn't drop straight away, and so you just literally keep drawing. If you watch my fingers, you keep drawing the syringe back and collect it like that, because it's thick and gloopy, really thick. I think I've said it before. It's a bit like golden syrup. So it doesn't drip, it sits there and collects, and eventually you can remove it. So think of something like that. If you've got time, we can try to see if we can get your community midwives to get you some syringes out to you to do that. Mothers who are coming in who have got diabetes, as I mentioned, are coming to our diabetic clinics, they're given syringes. And if you've got any risk factors, we'd try and make sure you can get some syringes. But let us know if you're struggling, and we'll see what we can do. So we see how we get on. So, and then it can be frozen, Sophie. So colostrum can be kept at room temperature for 24 hours. So what we'd normally suggest to you is, if you are collecting colostrum in advance, is that you would use, and many women only get tiny weeny amounts, is that they'd use the same syringe all day, and then that can go in the freezer. You'd name it and date it, ready to come in and put it in a clean plastic bag. And then that can go in the freezer for up to 6 months. If you know you're going to have your baby imminently, it could just go in the fridge, because it can go in the fridge for 5 days, and actually it keeps its properties even better just refrigerated. So if we can avoid freezing it, we will. The only thing to bear in mind is that when you come in, don't bring too much, because we have issues with storage here at the hospital, and it's very difficult to keep track of it. So if you could bring it in your own cool bag with ice blocks to keep it cool, that would be the best way to do it, and make sure everything is labelled and keep it with you. That would what we would advise, really. So I hope that helps with that, Sophie. Victoria's come back and she's replying to Sophie. She said exactly what I said. Ask your midwife. She said, you can then express collect the syringe and store it in the freezer. Thank you very much, Victoria. Abby has got a question here. She says, when is the best time to start pumping? I'm exclusively breastfeeding and my baby's currently 4 weeks old and we'd like to feed him 1 bottle of express breast milk per day so my husband can help with the feeding. Thank you. So you could really start now if you wanted to. So if you wanted to start now, that's fine. You've obviously got your milk supply established. In the past, we always said to people about 6 weeks. We think the milk supply established somewhere around 6 weeks. But if you're 4 weeks and it's all going well, I can't see why you couldn't start now. You could be thinking about doing it maybe straight after you've done the early feed in the morning. So we know that most women have more milk than they need in the morning. So after feeding your baby, you would then pump, and that would give you milk to do a feed later. And many women find that's the best time to do it, rather than trying to fit it in at other times. So most women in the Western world have more milk in the mornings. So feed your baby, then pump, and then you've got that ready for later. It's fine, remember, as I've just said, for up to 5 days in the fridge. So you can pump it, put it to one side. If you get to 5 days and it's still there and you haven't used it, pop it in the freezer for 6 months, up to 6 months. So you could be using it for mixing with weaning foods. And there are even recipes out there for breast milk ice cream and things like that if you want to be innovative. Or if you've got more than you need, the milk bank would be absolutely delighted for your milk. So have a think about that. So by all means, start now. I can't see why you couldn't, and think about doing it maybe straight after you've done your morning feed. I hope that helps, Abby. Claire's come back. She's just said thanks. She's going to leave him nibbling. Picking on something I've mentioned earlier about volumes, up to 300 mils. There's no way my baby would take that much express breast milk. Are the bottles so big because they're designed for formula? Is it something that's been puzzling me? Well, there is a big difference between volumes when it comes to breast milk and formula milk, because if you think about it, if we had to keep producing more and more volume, our breasts wouldn't cope, we'd be exploding. So of breast milk changes throughout lactation. So as my colleague Hannah often says, a ticking clock starts when that baby is born and the body knows that baby's there. So colostrum for the first 3 to 5 days, then becoming transitional milk, and then into mature milk, all driven by milk removal. And when we anticipate that when a woman has got her full milk supply, she's getting about 750 mils a day on average. Some will do more, some will do less. Women who've got twins will be doing quite a lot more. So if you think about that and then for our period, it fits in with that stomach size of 80 to 150 mils. So we anticipate a breastfed baby will be taking somewhere between 80 and 150 as their feeds in that region. And the composition throughout that time is changing. So as that baby gets older and needs different things in its milk, then the body's changing it all the time to meet that baby's needs. It's not just the protection. So as you know, if you come into contact with a bacteria or even a virus, one of those, then your body's responding, protecting your baby and changing what's in the breast milk. But it also changes the fat profile and the protein profile. It changes the enzymes to meet the needs of when the baby's beginning to be weaned. So it produces enzymes that are there to help the baby with weaning foods. And it increases enzymes that are there for protection. So as babies get older, they're putting more in their mouths, and it's changing what's in the milk to meet the baby's needs at each developmental stage. And it carries on changing, and we know that it's still beneficial for up to a year and beyond 2 years. So there's still benefits in being breastfed. So you're absolutely right, 300 mils would be a huge amount, and we certainly wouldn't be expecting a breastfed baby to be taking those sort of volumes at a feed. So more in the region of 80 to 150 would be more what we'd be expecting. So I hope that answers your question there, Claire. So, but what I didn't explain then is with formula milk, I said our breast milk keeps changing. With formula milk, it's a finite amount of nutrients in a finite amount of liquid. So as that baby needs more and more volume, more and more nutrients, the volume's got to go up, because you can't make it more concentrated, because that's not good for the baby. They end up constipated. So actually for a formula fed baby, the volumes do have to keep increasing to meet that baby's needs, whereas with a breastfed baby the volumes stay the same from about 4 weeks onwards and really don't change. So now I hope I've finished answering that question. I missed that crucial bit out. Emmy's come back. What's Emmy saying to us? She said thank you for the help, and her tipple was fizzy water. There was me thinking champagne. Fabulous. I can't see any reason why you cannot drink fizzy water. Go for it. Enjoy. And Ellie's come back and said she's reassured, which is lovely to know. Steph has come on. She's got a 2-week-old baby, not up to her birth weight. She's breastfeeding. Do you suggest top-up feeding from Express Breast Milk, either via bottle or syringes? He's jaundiced and does struggle with latching. I would suggest, if your baby's 2 weeks old now and not at its birth, that we would suggest expressing. Not only will expressing give you that additional milk to help your baby, and a baby that's jaundiced needs more milk to flush it out, it will also ensure that you've got your milk supply, because we know you've got that 2-week window to maximise your milk supply. And when you go beyond that 2-week window, it becomes really, really difficult to influence your milk supply. So I would say, yes, do. I hope you're expressing. Do keep going. Can I say, don't use a syringe though? The rationale behind not using a syringe is when you get into mature milk, it's fine for colostrum, but when you get into mature milk, it's much thinner and much runnier. It's very easy to shoot it down the baby's airways. So it's much easier for that baby to, what we call, aspirate, inhale it. So we would highly recommend you don't use a syringe. You could try a cup. Cup feeding is good, and I'm sure I had a cup here. Yes, I knew I had all my props ready. This is a little feeding cup. It's quite messy, but it's another way of getting milk into a baby. And if you look at Global Health Media, it's online, do a search, Global Health Media, there's a video, a lovely video of a baby being cup fed. I won't say it's the easiest thing to do, and I'll say it's quite messy, but it's an alternative to bottles. If your baby is happy being breastfed, then introducing a bottle probably won't cause any problems, because babies love to be breastfed. If they're meeting their needs with being breastfed, you know, they're happy with that, then there's less of an issue introducing a bottle. If you're introducing a bottle, we would want to talk about responsive bottle feeding. So let me find one of my dolls. They're going to fall over. I thought they might. So thinking about having your baby upright, in close, brushing for a gape, telling the baby they're going to be fed, and then introducing the bottle as horizontal as possible. I know we covered this with Naomi, I think, last week. The reason for that is if we tip a bottle up, the baby's got to feed at the speed the bottle's going at. If we bring it down there and make sure that only this bit is full, the baby can feed at their own speed, and they can pace their feed. They much prefer it. Brushing and asking that baby to open its mouth also helps with regard to breastfeeding. You're telling the baby, I want you to open your mouth, and it's nice if you think about it, you don't want food thrust in your mouth. So they're going to open their mouth and take the feed. We would always start with a breastfeed and then introduce any supplementary feeds afterwards. So see how you get on. If you need more support, then get in touch with us. That's what we're here for, and see how you get on. Let me just quickly go back up to your question. So part of the issue with jaundice as well as babies can be really sleepy, so they're less likely to attach well. So getting food in your baby may really improve what's happening with breastfeeding as well. So think about maybe a cup and see how you get on with that, or if need be, use a bottle, but try and use the responsive bottle feeding technique. There's a YouTube video which is quite useful. It's made by the infant feeding team from the Royal Free Hospital, and if you do a search on YouTube for responsive bottle feeding, up it comes, and it's two members of their team doing a role play showing responsive bottle feeding, which is quite good too. But Steph, see how you get on. If you need additional support, you totally fit within our remit, give us a call, and we can, even if we just do it on Attend Anywhere, you know, which is our video platform, we can support you that way, or if need be, you can come in. But let us know how you're getting on, Steph, and I hope that's helped. Sophie's come back and said thank you. Oh, thank you very much. This is wonderful. Hello, Debbie. Debbie and I, midwives, we trained together. She's been watching, which is lovely. Ella's come in. She's got quite bad tuberous breast. Are there any problems or complications with this at all when breastfeeding? I'm due in December, but really fretting about this. I'm wanting to mix Formula 2 as I never let my partner see my breasts. I'm so embarrassed by them. Is this okay? Thank you. Ella, can I suggest you get in touch with us, because you're definitely somebody that we'd like to talk to. We know there are implications of having tuberous breasts, and we would want to maximise the milk that you can get, and we can talk about hand expressing in the antenatal period, making sure we get feeding off to a good start, whether you might be suitable for domperidone to try and increase your milk supply. Not everybody is, but I think, Ella, we would love to talk to you before you have your baby. So give us a call. We can do an Attend Anywhere, as I just mentioned, our video platform. It doesn't have to be face-to-face, or it could be if you wanted, but you are definitely someone we would want to have a chat with beforehand. What we're trying to do is see as many antenatal women beforehand, so that we're not dealing with any problems that we may have, we could have preempted. So I think it would be wonderful if you could get in touch with us, Ella. Give us a shout, ring or email us. Our contact details are on the OUH webpage. So if you go OUH, maternity, infant feeding, you'll find all our contact details on there. And we would love to meet you or do an Attend Anywhere call with you, because I think you would definitely be a candidate for us. So give us a call and hopefully we can make things go as well as we can. I look forward to hearing from you, Ella. Claire has come back. She said that's interesting. I think that's all about the composition of milk. Yeah, it is. It is interesting because it is so different. When you think about it with formula milk, and it can be quite distressing to parents who have got who are mixed feeding, because they see the volume of formula milk having to go up and they're thinking, I'm not producing enough breast milk. That's not the case at all, because what's still happening is the baby's still going to stay getting the same proportion of breast milk, but their needs are increasing, and so the proportion of formula milk has to go up. It doesn't mean that mother's producing any less milk. It just means that baby's needs in that percentage that baby's getting of breast milk are being met, but that percentage that is not being met with formula milk have to carry on increasing. So we spend a lot of time reassuring mums that it's not showing that their supply is going down, it's just showing that baby's appetite's going up and it's having to be met that way, and how clever the body is. Right, I've noticed a few more questions coming through. Elizabeth has come through. If your partner takes over feeding by doing an express bottle, e.g. once a day, do you recommend mums doing the first feed bottle feed so that the baby makes that connection with feed, or is that more confusing, so partner should do the first bottle feed? Depends how old the baby is, to be honest. As long as it's done responsively, as long as that baby's in close and feeling comforted and well supported, I don't think it really matters whether it's the mum or the dad. If a baby's older, then the baby will definitely be looking to mum for a breastfeed, and you'll have that baby turning in and going, I don't understand why you're doing this to me. So sometimes in those instances, it's usually better if it's the dad who does it. If it's an older baby, they really can be so clued into breastfeeding, they really don't understand that they're going to get milk from this bottle, and it can be quite distressing for baby and mummy. So see how you get on. There's no right, there's no wrong, and to be honest, as long as it's done responsibly, it doesn't matter. Just the older babies can be more challenging. I've known babies who have been extremely difficult to get to the breast. Mums have established a fantastic milk supply. They've bottle fed from the off because they can't get the baby on the breast. We've eventually, X number of weeks, got that baby to the breast, and then I remember this so clearly from Abingdon Baby Cafe days, and this baby was then breastfed for months and months and months. Mum needed to go back to work. Could we get that baby back on a bottle? Could we? Heck, that baby wouldn't go. It was not prepared to go back to a bottle. So it just shows you, so the baby will do it when they're ready. It's so interesting to see, that they do love to be breastfed if they can be. So as I say, Elizabeth, no right, no wrong, just see how it goes. If it's challenging, it might be easier if it's not the mum, because she'll get very upset. Ella's going to get in touch. Thank you, that would be fantastic. Give us a call, we look forward to hearing from you. So that's no more questions at the moment. Gosh, we've done 45 minutes already, I'm impressed. Oh, Lucy's coming and chipped in now straight away, well done. Do inverted nipples cause issues with breastfeeding, and should there be anything done before baby arrives? There's not much you can do about inverted nipples, Lucy, but the best thing you can do is skin to skin when that baby's born. And I know I sound like a total scratch record because I'm always saying this, but actually skin to skin when that baby is first born is a time of priming. Your babies are born with no preconceived ideas of what your breast is going to be like. So when they're born, you get them skin to skin, and they do, and we've talked about it before, they go through 9 stages. They said they're born, they usually cry, and always they pink up, they're alert, they move around, they wriggle around, and they then start licking around the nipples. They'll be there licking the nipple and working their way around it, putting their hands on it, and then they'll attach. Now, if your baby has never met anything else, any other breast, any bottle, etc., then you're the only thing it knows, and it will learn to breastfeed from you as long as we don't interfere. So if you imagine a flatter or more inverted nipple and we introduce a bottle, that's when it becomes an issue. So try and keep your baby skin to skin when your baby first arrives. Let your baby feed at breast. After all, we talk about it being breastfeeding, not nipple feeding. So we've known many women with inverted and flat nipples to feed without a problem. The only problem is it's in our heads it's a problem. So let your baby learn how to breastfeed from you. If there are problems after the baby's born, then there are things we can do to encourage the baby. Sometimes we might talk about using a pump, or we might do a bit of nipple stimulation if the baby really is struggling. But as long as we haven't mucked it up, you should be fine. Try and be assured, be reassured that it shouldn't be a problem. I hope that reassures you, Lucy. So skin to skin, let that baby do what it's doing. It has no idea what other breasts are like. Yours are the only breasts. Elizabeth's come back and thanked me. Carla, which mums and babies are in your remit? I haven't been discharged from midwives yet. I'd like someone to check my baby's latch and feeding. Do I ask the midwives to check this at my next check, or do I contact the infant feeding team? If you're not having lots of problems, then they should really be perfectly capable of doing it. Our midwives are all trained. They're absolutely fantastic, as are the MSWs. They all know what they're looking for with a good attachment. And what we're always going back to is this leaflet, if you remember, so that you're looking for, so the things that you can look at for yourself are that you're starting nose opposite nipple, and that you're bringing your baby on so that the upper lip is just skimming the nipple. So you can see that the chin is hitting first, and there's a lovely big gap underneath the nipple. This picture's even clearer, that one there. Chin in, upper lip just skimming the nipple, big gap underneath. And then when the baby goes on, we want the chin in against the breast because the chin's doing the work, and we want that nose free. If you've got a nose diving baby, it's not going on as well as it could do. So thinking about those things, it's thinking about how you hold your baby. So making sure that you hold your baby in such a way that the head can tip back. And I often talk about the hairdresser's sink. So this is the hairdresser's sink, and the baby's head tips into the hairdresser's sink. So thumb on one side, fingers on the other, so your baby's well supported, and the pressure is always coming from here. It's not coming any higher up. So when the baby goes on, they're going to go on. Let me move my laptop. They're going to go on in that movement. They're not going on in that movement. So what you want to look for is your wrist straight, or have you bent it? If you've bent it, you may end up with a baby that is nose diving. I don't know if you can see that. So it's in against there. So it would be nose diving in like that. And actually what we want is that, if you can see. So not that, but that. So that's what you're looking for. The signs that you've got good attachment might be that you can see a nice crescent of areola above, that the chin is well indented against the breast, that the upper lip has just skimmed the nipple, and that the jaw is doing this. You can see that jaw moving, and it will be moving right up to the ears, so right up to here. So you'll see all of this moving, and the baby will initially go on and go chomp, 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 pause, big deep sucks, and you'll hear swallows, big deep sucks and swallows, and then after a little time it'll slow right down, big pauses, little flutter, big pauses, little flutter. That's the chocolate pudding with a teaspoon bit of it. So have a look at that. There are some great videos online with attachment and things. You can go and have a look at BFI, so the UNICEF Best Baby Friendly Initiative. I've got some lovely ones on there. They've got an animation on it. There's an animation showing a baby coming on, and you can see what's happening. That's a really good one as well. So go and have a look at some of those videos. But yes, get your midwife to check. If it's more than they, if it's still not right and they've checked it and everything, then yes, get in touch with us. So we tend to be the ones who deal with it when it gets a little bit more complicated. And our attitude is, if you've seen us, it's because some things are a little bit more complicated than the norm. Our staff are really, really capable of dealing with all the normal breastfeeding support and are superb at it and really encouraging. So I would say that, Carla, start with your midwives. If things don't get better, that's when you'd come to us. All right, hope that helps. Lucy's come back. Thank you. Sorry, just a bit more. Does it matter if you have one inverted and one outward nipple to mix the breasts? it's interesting how we have heard of babies who will attach on the inverted and not attach on the everted. How interesting that can be. It just gets much practice as possible, and hopefully your baby will deal with what you've got, and just see how you get on. We you know, that's one of those things we'll just have to wait and see how your baby does. Perhaps just try the inverted side first and see how he gets on, and then hopefully that your baby will cope with both. You're not uncommon. We meet so many women in your situation, and there's no reason why feeding shouldn't work for you. As I say, babies are born and deal with what they've got. They've got no preconceived ideas of what a breast is going to be like. So well, that's us on questions, unless anybody's got any more. So just recapping then, I was talking about responsiveness, unless anybody else comes back in. An organisation that might be worth having a look at is called Grow Brain, and they do this lovely leaflet and talking about bonding and attachment, and how important it is to think about that attachment. Anybody who's watching, I know a lot of the questions have been from post-haste, but some from 19/8, thinking about that, making that attachment now. You know, it's connecting with your baby at this stage, and then thinking about that connection when your baby's born, and knowing that that baby's dependent on you. You're we call you a dyad. Mother and baby should never be separated. Mother and baby stay together as one, and I think that's caused some consternation, because I think hasn't Matt Hancock just said that mothers and babies are counted as two when it comes to the numbers, which is going to be interesting, because really and truly, as far as we're concerned, mothers and babies are one. They are together and should never be separated. So thinking about, you know, so that connection. If you're still an antenate, just think about it. Go and have a look at Grow Brain and have a look at some of their resources, and also anyone who has got who's already got their baby. Just think, you can't love your babies too much. It's not possible. Babies need to be totally and unconditionally loved, and that will grow lovely, confident, happy babies going forward. We can't spoil them. They haven't got the capacity. They haven't got the brain capacity to be spoiled. So just loving and cuddling and meeting their needs is all we should always be doing with our babies. So I hope that helps. Let's just see what else has come through. I've had a thank you from Lucy and a thank you from Steph. And she's off to go and look at the videos. So any other questions? We've got a minute or two, and then I'm going to go meet these new midwives and go and say hello to them. As I say, they're most of them these days coming from universities that are baby friendly accredited, so they are all really well trained. It goes back to that question about, do you need to be seen by us? Our midwives come through universities, and the Oxford Brookes University is UNICEF baby friendly accredited, so they've all had really good training through every year that they've been at uni, 3 years at uni, on supporting breastfeeding, understanding why it's so important to support breastfeeding and to help mothers to breastfeed, the impact it has on mothers and babies for breastfeeding and not breastfeeding, and making it, you know, as good an experience for all, and getting it all off to a good start, as they call it in the leaflet that we give you out. So the off to the best start with the leaflet that you get when you're in hospital with us. Right, well, I think I might call it a day then, seeing as I've not heard any more questions, unless there's going to be a quick flurry at the end. And I'm going to say a huge thank you to you all for all your wonderful questions. Good luck to those that haven't had their babies yet. Ella, I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Please get in touch. And any of the others. So Carla, get in touch if things aren't getting any better. Lucy, I hope things go really well. Let us know if you need anything. And Elizabeth and Claire and all the others who've put their lovely questions through. Sophie, thank you so much for all your questions. And Imi, and enjoy your fizzy water, Imi. And Claire, Abby, all of you, Victoria, just checking I haven't missed anyone. Anna, I think that's all of you. Thank you so much for all your questions. And we'll see you next week, and there should be 2 of us next week. I think Naomi's back and it'll be the 2 of us again. Thank you very much, and share the videos with friends if you think they might be beneficial to them. And we'll see you next week. Goodbye.